When to use the splice foot as a splice and when to use the rail connector. This is a question we get very often, and some people think that when you're using the splice foot, you're eliminating the rail connector, but that's not always the case. In fact, if you're a regular splice foot user, you should still keep the rail connectors on hand in the truck, which is our traditional splice. We call it a rail connector because it's very strong and it actually acts as one continuous rail. So you can put this anywhere you want because you're using the two same T-bolts that go into the mounts, but a splice foot, you are limited to where you want to put it. For example, you would never want a cantilever off of the last mount on the outside of the array. You want it inside like this, on at least one mount back into the array. So I would always keep a rail connector set on hand so that you can use them. But the beauty of the splice foot is that it does double up as a mount and a splice. So if you're attaching to the rafter like you see here with the two screws going into the middle, into the rafter, you're obviously limited to where your rail connections are gonna go. Sometimes they might line up, like if you have a staggered system like kind of here, you can see that there's no mount there, but there's a mount here. You can go ahead and use it as a splice and then use the regular rail connector here. Or if you've got two rails coming together close to a mount and you have enough rail excess on each side, you can go ahead and move that over and use that mount as a rail connector, as a splice, and eliminate a lot of hardware. And then if you're installing into the decking, like this mount here, it's got the 4 screws into the corner for the splice foot. Then you have much more flexibility. We also made this splice foot so that in a pinch, if you ran out of rail connectors and you need to finish the job, you can slide this in and you still have access to the screws on each side. So if you're wondering why these flanges are longer on the uphill side, that's the reason why, is so you can still get access to that screw and the front screw, and in a pinch you can install this where you need to. Same thing goes if you missed a mount and your spans are too far, you can put in an extra mount, slide it in and install it and you're good to go. So I would say always have rail connectors on your truck for a backup, but you can use the splice foot as a splice where applicable. The only time you're gonna be using 2 T-bolts is when you're using it in that splice foot application. 1 T-bolt for 1 rail, 2 T-bolts for 2 rails. So once again, rail connectors and splice can be used interchangeably. Definitely have both on the truck.